Sorry, thought I unmuted. Mr. Chair, I was going to say it's noon, but it looks like we still have a few people popping in. Why don't we wait just another minute?
Sure.
Thank you. I think we might need to make sure we have one more just to ensure we get a quorum.
Saw the rain today.
Indeed. Let's see, I think. Okay, I believe we are ready to go. We have a quorum now.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the March 13th WCCC meeting. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. First item, we have a public comment. We have a letter from Dave Robertson. Stephen, has the county responded back, or what's the status of the letter?
We will send a response. I apologize to Mr. Robinson. I've begun drafting it a couple of times and it keeps falling off my to-do list. So I have it open actually right now, try to get that out here soon. And I believe Mr. Robinson's in the attendees list, and if may want to have an opportunity to address the committee.
Sure.
So Mr. Robinson, can you hear us and unmute?
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Robinson. I am a resident of Washington County, living in the Rivermead community. I've been heavily involved in watching the King City planning as it evolves for Kingston Terrace. I'm enthusiastic about that growth. However, I have concerns about the connectivity of roads and specifically the King City transportation system plan, we believe is heavily flawed. And the three questions I've given to Mr. Roberts highlight those, and I just look forward to getting those responses. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Do we have anyone else, Stephen, for public comment?
Those are the only ones that I was aware of. Is there anyone else in the attendees that wants to make a comment? And Mayor Delane, I know you're there. We're going to get you promoted here. Anyone else that would like to make a public comment? I don't see anyone, sir.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to item number 2. Do roll call, and I'd like to introduce, we have a new alternate for the city of Tigard. He's not attending today because Mayor Lube is here, but Yi Kang Hu, new counselor in Tigard, will be Mayor Lube's alternate, correct, Heidi? All right, well, we want to welcome him and looking forward to seeing him one day in your absence. With that, Stephen, can you go ahead and call the roll, please?
Excellent. I will do that. I'll go by jurisdiction order again. So for City of Banks, Mayor Jones.
Here.
Thank you. City of Beaverton, Mayor Beatty.
She did text and say she wasn't going to be in attendance. She has a headache.
Okay. All right.
Which makes it sound trivial. Apparently it's a terrible headache, and she's got her state of the city today,
Yeah.
and she's very pregnant. So I just wanted to, preface that.
Yeah. No, trust me, I know that can be pretty debilitating. For Cornelius, Mayor Delane.
Present.
Thank you. City of Durham, Mayor Sherrado.
Oh.
All right, we will come back. City of Forest Grove, Mayor Wenzel. Mayor Wenzel, all right. City of Hillsborough, Mayor Callaway.
Speaking of headaches, Callaway is in the house.
I'll reserve comment. For King City, Mayor Fender.
Here.
Good
Thank
morning
you.
or afternoon, everyone.
Sorry. North Plains, Mayor Linehan.
Present. Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Sherwood, Mayor Rosner.
I am here. Hello, everyone.
Thank you. City of Tigard, Mayor Lube.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you. City of Tualatin, Mayor Bubenik.
Here.
Thank you. City of Wilsonville, I don't see Mayor Fitzgerald yet, but we'll keep an eye out. And then for Washington County, Commissioner Fye.
I'm here, Stephen.
That's fine.
And Mayor Callaway, I feel like from now on, I might end up saying, speaking of headaches, is Mayor Callaway in the room?
All right. Thank you, Stephen. So just on the other two items on number 2, just please confirm that the roster that's attached to the agenda is correct for your city. And then also make sure you have your calendar all set for our meetings throughout the year. You can see those as attachments to the agenda today. That brings us to action items number 3, 3A, consideration of WCCC meeting summary for February 13th, 2023, our minutes from our last meeting. Did anyone see anything that need to be corrected?
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
Having a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion on those on those motions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? See none. Anyone abstaining? It's unanimous. All right. Item 3B, Transportation Development Tax Project List Update. These are a updated list of projects eligible for TDT tax funding. Erin Wardell would review these for us, and I believe we have to provide a recommendation for approval for the board. Good afternoon, Erin.
Sorry, Chair, if I could, just a quick moment. I was just going to say, without Mayor Fitzgerald here, I was actually going to allow Council President Ackerval into the meeting. So I think just so she has an opportunity to hear and participate. So thank you.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, Erin. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Erin Wardell. I'm the Planning and Development Services Manager for Washington County, and you have before you a action item to make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. Washington County's Transportation Development Tax is both a tax, as in the name, and also a system development charge. Therefore, we follow statutory rules around SDCs, and that includes having a list of eligible projects. Normally, we update our project list about once a year. Updates typically come because a city or Washington County has completed a planning effort and now would like to add or remove projects from the list. We have quite a few amendments this year before you, and these come from the cities of Hillsborough, North Plains, Sherwood, Tualatin, and Wilsonville, as well as Washington County. And we have most of those amendments on the road list, one amendment on the transit list. So this is a pretty extensive update. The WCCC TAC did recommend approval at their last meeting. So today the request is for the WCCC to consider the project list and make a recommendation to the board. The board is then scheduled to take action at their April 18th meeting.
That was quick. All right. Any questions or comments on the list of projects? Mayor Rosner.
Thank you. I'm just trying to understand the list. So maybe this is a newbie question, but I noticed for the Sherwood projects, there's one, it looks like it's crossed out. Does that just mean it's completed? And it's for the installing a missing pedestrian crossing.
Which project number are you looking at?
4,000.
Project number 4,000 on the list. So it could be that Sherwood staff requested this be removed either because the project has been completed or because they would like it to no longer be on the TDT eligibility list. There's a couple of reasons why that could have happened, and I don't want to speak for Sherwood staff, but this change was brought forward by Sherwood staff based on planning efforts that have happened in the area.
All right, I'll check with staff. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments for Erin? have to minimize my, it's a pretty tight screen there. The list of projects, I had to blow it up a little bit to read it.
It's a very extensive project list, as you'll see. And some jurisdictions are more active in keeping projects on the list because they want projects to be either eligible for TDT fund expenditure or because they would like to give developers more credit for building the projects as a part of an active development application. Some jurisdictions are a little bit more casual about projects they want on the list, and they only put them on when they're ready to expend funds. And so it really just depends on the individual city or the county and how they choose to put projects on the list. I did just receive a note that Sherwood staff's request was because they said that project was complete.
Okay. Yeah, I saw quite a few of the items on our list we did with our bond program.
Mm-hmm. And it's nice to take them off the list when they're complete, because as you can see, it's a really long list and it can be hard to keep track of. So we appreciate being informed when projects are done and we can take them off the list. And then new projects come up because the jurisdictions are all completing planning projects and there's new projects to bring forward.
Okay. Welcome, Mayor Wenzel. All right. So with that, do we have any more questions for Erin? All right. Do I have a motion to recommend this for board approval?
Callaway, so moved.
Second.
Oh. Terry can have it.
Sorry about that.
Terry, yeah. I have a motion and a second to recommend the TDT list for board approval. Any discussions on those motions? Seeing none, go ahead and all those in favor say aye or raise your hand, or both.
Aye.
Those opposed? Seeing none, anyone abstaining? It passes unanimously. All right. Erin's up again for the MSTIP Opportunity Fund request. She will present us some of the Opportunity Fund requests, and we'll have an opportunity to ask some questions about the projects and ideally approve them. Erin.
Thank you. Yes, Metro has their Regional Travel Options Grant Program applications active now. So today's action is for the WCCC to consider these 3 requests and then make a recommendation on using MSTIP opportunity funds for these projects. These projects total $107,000 of MSTIP opportunity funds. There are 3 requests. The first is from the City of Tigard, and the project is for funding of the Tigard Tualatin Safe Routes to School Project Coordinator. That's a request of about $25,000. Washington County is then sponsoring 2 requests on behalf of the West Side Transportation Alliance. One of those is for an advanced transportation demand management strategies and promoting travel options in Washington County. And then the other is improving bicycling and e-bike conditions in Washington County. The first is a MSTIP Opportunity Fund request of $75,000. And the second is a request for about $6,300. We have staff available from City of Tigard and then Jeff Pozdolski from West Side Transportation Alliance if there are any specific questions about these grant applications. The WCCC TAC did recommend your approval at their last meeting.
Right. Questions for Erin about these 3 requests? Mayor Lou.
I don't have a question. I just want to say what an incredible program Safe Routes to School has been for our community, and really growing year after year, getting kids involved, and the amount of kids that we have that do the walk and ride to school. And it's an incredible program. And I hope you help us support it.
Mayor Fender.
Hi, thank you. I also am a huge supporter of Safe Routes to Schools. I will say that I only recently learned that the Safe Route to Schools coordinator at Tigard is actually there to provide Safe Routes to Schools to all TTSD schools, which was very welcome information. I kind of wish we had known that previously, but like we're off to a good start getting King City with Deer Creek Elementary kind of locked in. So this is just a highlight that for any school within TTSD that is not aware that the individual is not just for Tigard schools, but for all TTSD. I'm just making you aware because we were not. So thanks.
Right. Thank you. Other questions, comments? Scanning for hands up here. All right, not seeing any. So what are we doing here? So we're going to approve these requests. Do we have any motions?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the M-STEP Opportunity Fund request for this month. Any discussions on those motions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Anyone abstaining? No abstentions. So it's unanimous. Thank you. That moves us to the information and discussion section of our agenda. Our first item is 4A, the 2024 to 2027 statewide transportation improvement plan update. This will be led by Matt Freitag of ODOT. So after the presentation, we'll pepper him with questions and comments on ODOT's plans for the next few years. Welcome, Matt.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much. All right, Teresa, I appreciate it if you're able to pull the slides up there. Apologies, my internet out here is sometimes spotty, so I don't trust it to do video and sharing and audio all at the same time. I'm sorry, are the slides up yet? I'm not seeing them.
No.
Okay, gotcha.
There right now. Thank you.
Sure.
So while waiting, Matt, the public comment is open till when on this list?
Public comment, I believe, is open until late April.
Okay.
You know, I have a slide on that in here. So
all right, great.
All right. So thank you very much. So first off, thanks everyone. I'm happy to be here to share that ODOT's reached the next phase of our public comment period for the 24-27 STIP. This is the culmination of 3 years of work to make investment decisions in our transportation infrastructure. So you can see the quick overview of what I'll cover today. So the overview, the categories, our process to solicit public feedback, and then I will go into a few of the projects specific to Washington County today. Next slide, please. So first off, what's the STIP? It's ODOT's statewide transportation infrastructure, improvement program. So it's our 4-year program for how we will spend funds on projects, which include construction on highways, public transit, and active transportation. So you can see that we have the funds laid out there and where they will be going. We do not talk specifically about grant programs or our regular maintenance and operations of our system, or then our administrative functions. Also, right now, we are currently in the final year of delivering our 21-24 STIP, and looking forward to this next phase for 24-27. Next up, please. So there's 3 main phases of STIP development. So in 2020, the Oregon Transportation Commission allocated funding in 2020, and then came back in 2022 to allocate more funding after IIJA was passed. Once the funding was allocated, ODOT went through a rigorous project selection process, including scoping individual projects. And now we're entering the public review and commission approval phase. Each of these phases involves significant public engagement, particularly the funding allocation stage, where decisions are made on how much to invest in each area. Next slide, please. So the STIP includes more than $3 billion in total funding, a significant increase due to infusions from both House Bill 2017 and the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA. The commission conducted significant public outreach and received hundreds of public comments in 2 rounds. First, when they did the original funding allocation in 2020, and then again in 2022, when they put in the additional funds from IIJA. The OTC allocated funding based on public input and state priorities laid out in the Oregon Transportation Plan and ODOT's Strategic Action Plan. This led to a number of investments and changes. A big investment in both state highway and local bridges, a big increase in funding for public and active transportation, more funding for safety projects that reduce fatalities and serious injuries on local roads and state highways, greater investments in local government programs, and a commitment to making the system accessible for people experiencing a disability through construction of ADA compliant curb ramps. Next slide, please. So Commission allocates funding among 6 program categories. So up top, there's Fix It. These are projects that maintain or fix the state highway system. Next up is Safety. So these are projects focused on reducing fatal and serious injury crashes on Oregon's roads. Then Enhance, which are highway projects that expand or enhance the transportation system. Non-highway, which includes bicycle, pedestrian, public transportation, and transportation options projects and programs. Local programs are funding that goes directly to local governments for priority projects. And then we have ADA curb ramps, which is replacement or construction of ramps to make sidewalks accessible and meeting ADA requirements. And you can see on the bottom, we have under other functions, workforce development, planning, data collection, and administrative programs using our federal resources. Next slide, please. So here we have the general breakdown of funding percentages between the various funding types. So you can see 1/3 of it goes to maintaining the existing system through Fix It. That same amount collectively goes to other ODOT funding programs to make improvements to the transportation network. Almost 20% goes directly to local governments for priority projects. And then the remaining 11% goes to other, which are the federally funded programs to do planning, data collection, workforce development, and other important functions. Next slide, please. All right, so I mentioned we're in the middle of our public engagement process, but just about 2 years ago, ODOT R1 is Region 1 for the Portland metro area. We shared the draft 150% project list. That was then refined over the next year. So in summer 22, we shared the 100% project list. And here we are receiving public comments and opportunities for some statewide feedback on our draft STIP. And then moving forward to planning on having the Oregon Transportation Commission adopting the 24-27 STIP later this summer. Next slide, please. So public review and public comment. You can see here we have various opportunities for receiving comments that are going to happen in the next about a month and a half. A number of major themes came out of our discussions with advisory committees and the public. 3 of them are support to increase non-highway funding to advance equity, address climate, and enhance accessibility and mobility for all. There was also support for Fix-It investments and reluctance to cut spending on bridge and pavement preservation to avoid accelerating system deterioration. There's also strong support for enhanced highway investments to reduce congestion and to help the economy. So these themes weighed heavily in the Commission's final decisions on funding allocation amongst the various categories. Next slide. So specific to opportunities, we have 3 open houses that are coming up in the next several weeks. And actually on here, Clackamas County has finalized their open house time. It is 4:30 to 6 p.m. That is also roughly the same time or right before the Region 1 ACT meeting, the Area Commission on Transportation. So there would be a good opportunity for those of you that are ACT members to also participate in the open house there. The Washington County specific open house is in Beaverton on Saturday the 8th. It will be in conjunction with the farmers market there at the Beaverton Library, and I will be in attendance at that one. And then we'll also have an opportunity in Hood River on April 25th to receive feedback directly. Next slide, please. So at this point in the process, the decisions have been made about how much money goes into each category in the STIP. And we've selected projects that we intend to move forward, but we really need input from the public. We do have a couple of questions here about projects in the STIP. You know, what impact could these projects have on the community, either good or bad? And then also, how can ODOT mitigate potential negative impacts of a proposed project and ensure the project meets community needs? So we use these comments as we finalize the list of projects and begin the project development process. We usually don't change a change the project list much, but comments can be helpful in knowing where we have potential issues and where we need to work specifically with the community to address those issues. Next slide, please. So here's the two, a couple of web addresses to get information on previous DIPs, and then also get a little more details on the project lists. I think the slides, the links are active on the PDF slides that are on the website right now. So if you want to access them that way. Next slide, please. All right, so now we'll go into some specific details on Region 1 projects. It's generally the metro area. This will include all Region 1 projects, but it will not include the urban mobility office projects, which are tracked separately. And you'll see, if you look at this list, there's an outlier right there, the bridge program, which has almost 50% of the funds in Region 1. And I'll get into some details on that here on the next slides. So next up, please. So for project selection factors, how we select projects differs across the different categories of funding and individual programs. Key factor across all these programs, though, is need. Where do we most need to make the investments to have the impact we're trying to have, whether that's keeping the system in a state of good repair, improving safety, or improving transportation options. Particularly in our fix-it and safety programs, we rely heavily on data and engineering analysis to determine where the highest priority needs lie. We use crash data and data on system condition to guide where to make the investments. And we've worked to add factors around multimodal accessibility, greenhouse gas emissions, and equity into project selection across multiple programs, particularly public transit and active transportation, but certainly not limited to those. Projects in the enhanced highway category were selected primarily based on their benefits for freight and congestion relief. And throughout this process, we consider stakeholder input. We've heard from local officials, ACT members, and members of the public about transportation needs and factor those comments into our prioritization. Next slide, please. So here's the general themes of the region-specific funding. 75% of our funds are going to ADA or to bridge work. And that's, obviously quite a bit for just two categories. But with the remaining 150 million, we have 30 projects and different buckets that are focused on safety. So almost 100 million specific to safety. And then investments in the urban arterials, almost half of that funds go, 10 of the projects go to ODOT facilities. We have quite an investment on 82nd Avenue that's is part of the jurisdictional transfer that ODOT recently did with the city of Portland. And then specific to safety projects, we have 8 local arts projects that are 22 million right there. Next slide. So this is apologies for a horrible map that kind of shows projects kind of gently strewn about in the metro area. And the next slide, we'll go a little bit more into the center area, but still you can see some of the corridors right there, and then where the clusters of projects are specific on the west side. I'll get into a lot more detail that's a little more useful than that. So next slide, please. So specific to Washington County projects, like I said, we've got ADA, and some of those programs, ops projects are going to be region-wide. So that's throughout the metro area. We do have 3 specific projects that hit Washington County and then other counties, and those are improvements on our more major thoroughfares, I-5 and 26. We've got 6.7 million that's going directly to the improvements project on 99W in Tigard that is actually starting construction next month. And then on the right side, we do have one project, Rock Creek Bridge and on Corn Pass, and then a local project on Cornell, and 4 more projects that are safety. And we'll have some slides on those in just a moment. Next slide, please. So you're going to see things that look a little bit different in the STIP. We are doing more of a construction reserve approach. So we program funds for design and for right-of-way acquisition where needed, and then other phases if needed. But when it comes to construction, we are not programming specific numbers into construction. We've found with recent cost escalation and other pressures, getting an accurate construction cost estimate 5 to 8 years prior to construction is a challenge. So we pool the funding for construction, and then as projects progress and our design gets further along, when we're at an appropriate point, that's when we will address the construction estimate and amend the STIP to have specific programming for this specific year for the project. So we're going to have a little bit more detail in there and wanting to provide a little more useful information. Next slide. So as far as the different categories, we'll start with bridge. You can see a long list of bridges with some very big funding amounts. Unfortunately, none of those are specific to Washington County on this list. Some of these are carryover from previous STIP cycles. But biggest amongst here is painting the Fremont Bridge, the west approach ramp. So you can see that's quite an endeavor to get paint up there. Next slide. On our local bridges, though, like I mentioned, the Corn Pass Rock Creek Bridge project. So this replacement of this project was part of the obligations from the county for the jurisdictional transfer of Corn Pass from Washington and Multnomah counties over to ODOT that happened a few years prior. So once this bridge is replaced, then that obligation will be completed. Next up. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we have ARTS, so that is All Roads Transportation Safety, if you're into acronyms there. Of this list, we have the Northeast Cornell project, which is right near there in the middle. So that is going to be a local agency project that will be delivered through ODOT's federal aid program to make some safety improvements on Cornell at 17th and at 21st. Next slide, please. So our pedestrian bike strategic, we've got a few projects in Washington County on TV Highway 99W and Hall. And I've got next slides, we'll go into details. So next slide. So our first up, we have two locations to provide enhanced pedestrian crossings at 142nd and at 214th across TV Highway. So this will look like some of the previous work we've done on TV Highway, maybe most recently between 44th and 45th. So pedestrian activated beacons, full striped crosswalk, median island, and we're looking at the entire corridor of TV Highway and identifying spots where people don't have enhanced crossing opportunities. So putting those in to narrow the gaps between crossings. And then you can see on the bottom there, we are looking at putting in a buffered bike lane on TV Highway between 139th and Murray. And let's see here. Next slide, please. So here we have another enhanced crossing just north of Tigard on the section of Hall Boulevard that is unincorporated Washington County. So this is Hemlock. So you've got a park on one side and apartment complex on the other side, and many users wanting to cross Hall to access the park. So this will be another opportunity to put in beacons and median island on this 3-lane section of Hall. This work is actually going to be coordinated with the recent earmark that was received by ODOT for some pedestrian improvements on Hall, both at Hemlock and at Spruce. So that's not going to show up here because the earmark has not been finalized yet, but we are certainly coordinating between our projects to make both of those locations improved for pedestrian crossings. Next slide, please. So here's our ops program. Often this is to make signal improvements or even replacing signals. So specific on here, you can see in the middle, Oregon 8 at 10th and Walnut. So next slide, I've got something on the project itself. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the US 26 active transfer traffic management first. So this will be an extension of our real-time network, which we've done work on 26, on 217, on I-5, and even I think down on 205 as well. So this is the next phase of it, looking further out on 26 to put in variable advisory speeds and more variable message signs to give travelers information so that as they're traveling down the highway, they can make decisions on, or they can have information on what's coming up on the highway so they can make decisions on their travel routes. Or if nothing else, begin to slow down to avoid getting to the back of a queue. Next slide, please. So here we have TV Highway 10th and at Walnut. So this will be a signal replacement project to upgrade this existing signal to be a little more compliant with current equipment, and then with ADA ramp replacements to make the area more accessible. And next slide, please. So then kind of to catch all the other categories, we do have curb ramps in various projects throughout the region and the state. And then let's see here, the other one on there is the, nothing really specific to Washington County, but there's quite a few other spots there. I guess second from the bottom, you can see that I mentioned previously the 99W project in Tigard. And that's about it for the variety of projects we've got for 24-27. Apologies for going through it very quickly. There's a lot going on within ODOT, but with that, I'm happy to take on any questions. Oh, there we go. Apologies, we had one last slide. It is Multnomah County, but certainly is Washington County adjacent. So this is a little bit more in our real-time program expansion to hit a couple sites on I-5 to provide variable advisory signs and message boards. And I think that's it for my slides today. So unless you want to revisit some of them. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Mayor Bubenek if you want to coordinate comments, or I'm happy to just take questions.
Looks like Jeff's up first. Jeff, you're up.
Thank you. Matt, I thought there was also going to be a safe street crossing between Hillsborough and Cornelius on Highway 8. Is that part of a different program?
I'm not familiar with that. Do you recall roughly the location of that crossing?
I want to say it was like 314th or somewhere between. I thought it was 314th.
I'll need to look into that a little bit more. I do know we have a crossing at East Lane, which is nearing completion of design and will be in construction later this year. But that is not a Safe Routes to Schools project specifically. That was a 2022 earmark.
Not a Safe Routes to School, safe crossing. So we've had, it's one of many places that we've had fatalities on Highway 8, but that's one of them on the easternmost side, the Hillsborough side of the area between Hillsborough and Cornelius. That's on Highway 8 there. So I think there was a flashing beacon. It was going to be one of those flashing beacon crossings.
Which crossing were you looking at? What cross street?
I thought it was 314th, but I may have my numbers wrong. It may be 331st.
Yeah, we are looking in that area. So yeah, East Lane is just west of 341st, but then we are looking further east, so kind of in the 334th area of identifying another priority location for crossing.
Okay, but thank you.
Not at this point, yeah.
Stephen.
Thank you. Just in response, I think, to Mayor Delane's question, I know at our TV Highway Steering Committee meeting not too long ago, I think it was Mr. Winsheimer from ODOT mentioned there was some additional funding that was coming to address some crossing improvements in the Cornelius area. And I think it might have been Great Streets, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, related to that, in that segment of TV Highway, we did do a road safety audit back in 2020, and that did create a prioritized list of improvements. So now we're seeking funding to implement those improvements.
Okay. Other questions for Matt? Mayor Rosner.
Yeah, thanks for all of that, Matt. Really appreciate the update. Quick, maybe I think this is an unrelated question, and we can take this offline, but we've had a request in for over a year to get speed limits lowered on Edie Road and Elwert. It's where we had that tragic accident where the two young girls were killed. And can you help us get pointed to who we need to talk to at ODOT about getting that accelerated? We had all our traffic studies done in a matter of weeks, and the county was on top of it, and they were done in a matter of weeks, and it's been sitting in ODOT for a year now.
Yeah, I will. I'll look into that. As far as the speed studies, we have had quite the backlog because we have 2 people to do the entire state. But they're vitally important to making improvements. So I will look into that. I know Mary Lou.
And we had completed speed studies already. We have the data, so if they could use our data, that would be great.
Yeah, I will follow up with that at ED number. Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Fye.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt, thank you. Great presentation, and just a quick plug. I think you're probably tired of me saying, and as well as Chris and Steven, just plug in Farmington Road. You know, it keeps not getting on this list, and I think our staff, it's on their radar, and there's some potential, there's some stuff happening, but I just wanted to bubble that up for you. Just something to carry forward, so that Farmington Road raises to ODOT's attention. I think it is in little bed, but we could use some more ADA ramp, and it just needs some, you know, recognition and some love from ODOT, I think. And then I had a question on slide 5, but if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, I can start with Farmington specifically. Yes, we do have a access to transit project that should be in construction next year that will provide an enhanced crossing in the segment that ODOT still has on Farmington. Apologies, I don't remember the exact crossing location. And then we are in the middle of an ADA ramp project that will address at least some of the deficient ramps in that segment. But you're correct that more is needed in that section of Farmington to get it up to what we consider a better standard.
Thank you. That's really exciting. I had a question about your great PowerPoint presentation and just the slide number 5, the significant infusions from House Bill 217. Are you referring to tolling revenue on that, or?
No, and I'm certainly not the right person or not prepared to speak to tolling today to this group. But no, House Bill 2017 did provide other funding. It brought in mostly, at least in Washington County, it was on the Oregon 217 project. But I think that, yeah, following up with the tolling program, will have another element of funding if and when that comes to pass.
Right. So Stephen, is your hand up for Commissioner Fye or something different?
Oh, I just had a quick comment about Farmington Road. So we are in the process of working with ODOT to get through the contract process for a concept planning effort, and that'll help us, I think, determine the scope and desired future state of a much improved Farmington Road, and that'll certainly help set us up for funding for a bigger improvement project out in the future as part of a jurisdiction transfer. And then and as Matt alluded to, I know there's some ADA work that's happening there and a few other things that are we think some good interim improvements there. But yeah, it's definitely one of those corridors that needs a lot of attention.
Okay, thank you. Mary Lou.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Matt. I wanted to say thank you. I know my community members, the Tigard community, is really excited to hear about the improvements on 99 that are starting here soon. And they've really responded to what we're trying to do together on Hall Boulevard. And so I want to thank you for your partnership and ODOT's partnership to really get this to a much safer street and get it over to the city of Tigard. I also just wanted to thank you in advance for coming to one of the Tigard community committees here. I think in April you're going to visit. They're very excited to see you. So thanks for reaching out to our local committees to talk to them on that level.
Sure, happy to do it. Yeah, it's exciting time on Hall and certainly on 99W.
Okay. Other questions for Matt? I just got one, Matt, and you alluded to it a little bit ago. So when it comes to tolling, because you said that did not include the urban mobility office. So if tolling does come, is this going to be, if there, in the event there actually are net revenues, is it going to be a separate process for allocation of that money, or is that going to get rolled into this process? Or are we way ahead of I put the cart before the horse here?
Way ahead. I have some assumptions on how it would come together, but the UMO and others would have a much better understanding of when those funds become available, how those get incorporated into the STIP. I assume, or even if they get incorporated in the STIP, I would assume they would, but I would assume by amendments, but I'm not really sure on the details there.
So this money is all not attached to the tolling program at all. This is all actual money that you have to allocate.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, all the funds we're talking about now is the programs that the OTC has authorized and the amounts the OTC has authorized statewide. So this is the funds we have, well, in hand, so to speak.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that. Any other questions from Matt? All right. I guess that's it. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
All right. So that brings us to item B, the West Side Multimodal Improvement Study. This is a study of US 26 corridor and the area around it that many of you might not know about. I'm one of them. When Chris did her prep with me about this meeting, I was like, what is this? I've never heard about this, and I've been around for 12 years. So this is an opportunity to share your comments on transportation problems you see in the study area, again, around US 26, and potential solutions. Today we'll have Kate Hawkins from Metro and Stephanie Miller from ODOT to give us an update on this program. Welcome.
Hi there. Hello, good afternoon. Just a second. I tried to pull up my screen and everything went black. There we go. Okay. Great. Do you want to start, Kate?
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Kate Hawkins, Senior Transportation Planner with Metro, and I'm here today with Stephanie Millar from ODOT. We are the co-project managers on the West Side Multimodal Improvement Study and are here today to provide an update on scenario development, evaluation, and next steps, and all of the work that's been done to date. And first, I can start off by sharing a little bit about the background and purpose of this study. In 2019, the governor's office asked ODOT to study the conditions and needs on the Sunset Highway, US 26, and evaluate actions that ODOT and its regional partners can take to build a multimodal system that supports all users that rely on it. This also stemmed from demands from businesses within Washington County who expressed concerns for moving goods reliable through the US 26 corridor, particularly between Hillsborough and Portland. So ODOT and Metro are co-managing this study together. And as you'll see here, the study area is centered around US 26 between Hillsborough to the Vista Ridge Tunnel. And the solutions that we're looking at and the investment options we're looking at extend well beyond these boundaries. The study kicked off in January 2022 and is expected to conclude by the end of 2023. These are the agencies and organizations we are partnering with on the study. We have a project management group that meets monthly and consists of technical staff from local agencies. We also have a steering committee that meets approximately quarterly and consists of elected officials and partner agency leadership. We also have 2 business representatives on the steering committee, Washington County Chamber of Commerce and Greater Portland, Inc., as well as 2 community-based organizations, Apano and Centro Cultural. The steering committee is responsible for receiving input and providing guidance to project staff and will ultimately recommend a plan and implementation strategy. As part of our community engagement for this study, we are working with Apano and Centro Cultural, two community-based organizations, to host focus groups with community members and learn more about needs and priorities of these communities within the West Side Corridor. We've to date held 3 out of 4, and the Vietnamese language focus group will be held this Sunday, March 9th, and then we will be done with those focus groups. We're also doing a lot of engagement with the business community. In November 2022, we held a business roundtable and are having follow-up conversations, briefings, and also held an additional focus group hosted by the Washington County Chamber of Commerce on February 27th. And we're also in touch with staff with Washington County's Economic Development Department and are planning to connect with their small business network to reach culturally specific and smaller businesses. And here's some of the key takeaways that we've gleaned from our engagement with businesses. At that focus group in November, we divided into 3 kind of breakout rooms focused on the various issues such as freight, commuting needs, and service and delivery businesses. And some of the things we heard there were concerns with moving freight for the corridor and how they influence business decisions like expansion and location decisions. We learned that workers are commuting from all over and work at all times of day, and some of them thus cannot rely on fixed transit routes. The economic impact of lost productivity due to congestion, safety concerns with Cornelius Pass Road are a major theme, and then also the lack of north-south connectivity and limited east-west options in the corridor. So we're continuing to engage with businesses as we progress through the study and keep them engaged and updated and soliciting feedback as well. These are the key issues and needs identified within the study area. These build upon findings from existing reports and planning efforts, and were refined with input from our project management group. We know it's important that all partner agencies agree on what the problems are before we can begin to develop potential solutions. You'll see here that identified issues and needs include transit travel times, last mile connections, transportation safety, climate and economic prosperity, and freight mobility. This corridor is home to Oregon's Silicon Forest and one of the strongest economic engines in the state. And while the West Side area has many important industries, this slide focuses specifically on high-tech manufacturing. Oregon exported $15 billion in electronics in 2021, totaling 60% of the state exports. And we know a lot of that comes from Washington County. Companies like Intel, Tektronix, and HP have deep roots in the region and have spun off hundreds of other startups. Today, there's more than 6,000 high-tech businesses statewide that provide over 81,000 jobs. So we know that Oregon's robust high-tech ecosystem provides a competitive advantage for any growing tech company. Oregon is also one of a handful of states in the U.S. that specializes in semiconductor manufacturing, and this talent and infrastructure have contributed to the development of the fast-growing software and information technology industry as well. And all of these businesses rely on the transportation network to move their employees and get their goods to market. And so this is really just recognizing the connection between economic development and our transportation system and the role it plays in this study. US 26 has the highest freight volume of all non-interstate highways in the region. And by looking at this data, we can see that freight actually makes up a relatively small portion of all trips on US 26 at about 5.3% of daily trips. But the overall volume of traffic is high, leading to the problem of congestion. On the map on the right, you can also see that Cornelius Pass carries a higher percentage of freight, as indicated by the darker and thicker line there. So, and Cornelius Pass is the designated hazard materials route because the Vista Ridge Tunnel is not safety rated for hazardous materials. So many trucks, especially those leaving, those serving businesses to the west of Cornelius Pass turnoff, may choose to take that route because it is at times more reliable than US 26, or because it gives them a more direct route to Terminal 6 at the Port of Portland without going through downtown Portland. The West Side is a major employment destination, as we've noted, and as you'll see here, we have close to 100,000 non-resident workers commuting into the area for work. About 64,000 commute out of the study area to other areas, and only about 27,000 both live and work in the area. So as you can see, we just have a lot of people moving in and out of the area and the corridor on a daily basis. And now I will hand it over to Stephanie.
Great, thank you, Kate. So where we are right now in this study is we're moving from review of scenarios to the evaluation process. And we hope to have our first modeling results in June. Scenario evaluation will give us some good information about what types of investments have merit and should be explored further as part of the future processes, of other future processes. Evaluation results will be reviewed with the project management group to help the team put together preferred or refined scenarios for evaluations. And the outcomes of the scenarios will be used to develop recommendations for the implementation plan that's the main outcome of this study. So to develop the list of investment options, we reviewed existing plans and studies and talked with our project management group and identified over 80 projects that could potentially address some of the problems we see in this corridor. We've grouped them into rough categories, which I'll now share with you on a high level. So we've grouped these investment options into these scenario groupings, and they move from easier to more complicated and more costly. Each subsequent scenario will contain elements of the one evaluated before it, with the exception of scenario 5. The project management group asked us to evaluate how congestion pricing would impact the study area issues. But I do want to note that the Oregon Transportation Commission and the state legislature have not indicated or directed us to look at tolling beyond those being considered on I-205 and I-5 currently underway. While this isn't an exact science, this process can give us some understanding of how projects or programs might affect the problems and issues and needs that we want to address. What we're looking for here is distinctions between approaches. The results of this first evaluation will result in a new package for further study, and it's likely that the study recommendations will draw from multiple scenarios. As we go through this modeling work, we'll be using this evaluation work, we'll be using both quantitative and qualitative tools to review the scenarios. So there's some items that can be modeled in the regional travel demand model and others that we'll have to look at qualitatively, excuse me. The first one here is the scenario 1, and this is where we look at what we can do with the pavement that's already on the ground or the relatively lower hanging fruit. So this is things like transit travel time improvements, transit fare subsidies, regional bike network completion. And also the kinds of things that we can't model, some of which I heard Matt talk about in his work, like active transportation management, those variable message signs and things like that can really help. Oops, and too far. Next, we ask what we could achieve with improvements to existing infrastructure. So in this scenario, we're testing what improvements do we see with new or enhanced parallel local routes or improved transit times. So we have a few things that we'll look at here in the travel demand model, and then once again, look at a few things qualitatively. Scenario 3 asks, what can we achieve? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Scenario 2 should have been, what can we achieve implementing relatively short-term moderate cost improvements? And scenario 3 is, what can we achieve with improvements to existing infrastructure? So here we see managed lanes, a little bit of freeway widening, and some other items. Scenario 4 is comprised of new infrastructure projects. How significant of an impact can be seen with new infrastructure investments when added to the previous scenarios? So as I said, these are somewhat cumulative. So we'll look at 1 alone, 2 with 1 and 2 combined mostly, and so on. On the left are the priority areas identified by the steering committee for the project, and on the right are the metrics that we'll use to evaluate them. So you can see we have a priority area of mobility and reliability, and we'll use things like person throughput, daily and peak periods, diversion onto local streets, vehicle delay, and travel time reliability as evaluation metrics. For safety, address crash types most often involving bicyclists and pedestrians, and address high crash vehicle locations on the highway and arterial road systems. For social equity, we'll look at increase in jobs and places reachable within 30 minutes by any mode of transportation, and direct household costs, transportation and housing costs as a percentage of income compared to no action. For climate, we'll look at change in VMT as a proxy for GHG emissions. And for economic vitality, we'll look at access to essential destinations, freight travel cost index, and value of commodity throughput. So this process is moving towards developing a draft implementation plan for the steering committee. By the end results is likely to recommend a mix of actions drawing from the different scenarios. Some may be easier and more cost-effective to implement and could happen more quickly, and others will require further study and planning and could occur in the future. So questions, comments?
Questions for Stephanie or Kate? Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mayor Rubinek. 2 quick questions. Well, actually, and then a sort of a theoretical one. The 2 quick questions are, do we know what percentage of the hazardous materials traffic that goes over Cornelius Pass heads north on 30 or heads to the airport? I'm assuming it's predominantly. And when you listed a new North Willamette crossing and a northern connector, I wasn't sure exactly what those implied. The hypothetical question is this, how is this going to be speeded up if the CHIPS Act initiative enhances the, shall we say, the semiconductor businesses in the Tualatin Valley? But the first 2 questions are just, I'm a little unclear as to what those specifically refer to.
Thank you, Councilor Rosenthal. So to your first question about hazardous materials on how and moving on Cornelius Pass and where they go north or south on Highway 30, I don't believe we do have that information, mostly because we were, in order to count the number of trips, we were looking at a screen line and within the study area, essentially like north and south of the Vista Ridge Tunnel, and how many trips are crossing that and where they're going. We can dig further into the data, but I don't have that number on hand today. And as for the other 2 projects, for the Northern Connector and the Northern Freight Bridge both came out of the Washington County Transportation Futures Study. And more definition is needed in terms of defining them more clearly, but we, as proposed, and then the Northern Connector would be a new arterial, essentially a tunnel that would run underneath Germantown Road.
Okay. That's what I sort of assumed it was, but it wasn't clear. Sort of a new tunnel.
Yes. And then the Northern Freight Bridge was proposed north of St. John's, where the St. John's Bridge is currently.
And would it include a bridge over the Columbia as well?
Not to my knowledge, no. Okay. Stephanie, did you have anything to add?
No, I've got the spreadsheet open and you're exactly what's in here.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I've got a quick one. So as far as expanding or widening US 26, is there actually any room for that? I thought it was already maxed out.
This study is looking at what ifs. And so we were asked to see what could make some improvements on travel time reliability on US 26 and ancillary roadways.
But is there a capacity to add like a lane on each side or no? I thought it was done.
Well, it's in level 4, so it would be a major construction project. Okay. So
all right. Just put it, just put a bridge on top. You make it, that East Coast style. You have 2 different levels, the local and the express. And the other question I have was the tolling congestion pricing. Is there any timeline for this? I guess before I get to that. So what's your timeline of wrapping up and having the recommendation out to, because you're in step 2, looks like you have a few more marks to make, and then you're going to release your recommendation. What's the timeline for that?
So our first run of modeling and evaluation should be done in June. And we're hoping to get back together with the steering committee in July and share with them what we found. And we'll keep narrowing the options based on what we're seeing and how they'd like to move forward. So the study should be complete by December of this year.
All right, great. And then getting back to tolling, is this going to be potentially any discussions with ODOT being part of the RMPP, or is this going to be something that's later beyond ODOT's initiative on tolling?
Yeah, this is not currently something that's been considered or discussed. The project management group asked us to look at this just to see what kind of impact pricing would have on this. We'll also look at things like parking pricing in the region to see how that could move the needle on travel demand and choices.
Okay. I see Jeff's hands up. He's probably talking about, he's going to talk about diversion onto DV Highway.
So I would be remiss not to say the word mesoscopic modeling.
Yes.
Don's lives on in mesoscopic modeling. So I think that's one of the things, right, is the concerns about where the modeling does, because absolutely I see the 26 focus, but 8 is the other huge corridor, right? Because Cornell basically just leads to 26 and 8 ends up being the alternate, and it is a freight route. So I have a little concern that 8's not being considered as part of the understanding of all this, because all the other plans and ideas were really neat when Bethany was the big growing area. But now that we're importing workers from Yamhill, Newburgh, you name any city south of us. I mean, the huge developments in Yamhill that are going on, and now that we can see the cars streaming off the 47 onto the 8 to make the connection, or out to 26 to make the connection. I almost think we kind of like, this was a great idea 20 years ago. We need to actually look a little further out, and into the rest of the folks in here. 99, right? How many people are streaming up 99 now to get into the Hillsborough employment area, right? The western one. Yeah, you see all the mayors nod their heads. 99's just backed up. So I think maybe we've missed some of the area, because I do agree with the freight. As a recovering Intel employee, they used Cornelius Pass because they couldn't get through 26. 26 is unreliable, even when you're not hauling hazardous waste. When you have a route, a state highway that is anywhere from 100% to 200% travel time beyond the forecasted, it's failed, right? I mean, we're seeing parking traffic on 26 again on Sundays, right? People are parking at Sylvan Hill basically on 26. It just turns into a parking lot from Sylvan Hill down, and that's on a weekend, right? So I think we got some concerns there. But I am really glad to see you're bringing forward my 20-year-old suggestion of putting a second deck on the 26 and another set of tunnels. I think that's great. Frank, that's something I've been talking about for 20 years, that, since we're already done going this way, now we start to go this way with the new tunnel. So maybe that's the right answer. So thank you.
Mayor Rosner.
I will keep it short because Jeff just channeled everything I was thinking. So I appreciate that. But I would just add to that, we're seeing heavy traffic on 99 coming out of Yamhill County. And it's not just all the way up 99 to 205 or 217. They're coming up 99 and they're cutting at Elwert and all the back roads to get over to those employment areas that you guys outlined in the presentation. So I agree, we need a larger regional look at some of these challenges.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or suggestions for the project team? All right. Well, thank you, Stephanie and Kate. I got educated today. Like I said,
Mayor,
I never heard of the project. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner.
Sorry, you can finish your thought, Mayor. I raised my hand very late,
Right.
but I did have a small question.
Yeah, this is the first time I've heard of this, and I think it's a project or a study that needs to be done probably sooner than later. I guess, as others have referred to, but looking forward to see what changes can be made to get all the pressure off of 26. Hopefully, we build new routes. We just don't overload existing ones. Commissioner Fye.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question. I think this is the most extensive update or information I've gotten this project. I'm wondering what's the total, how many miles is this study covering?
Well, it goes from the Vista Ridge Tunnel out to Hillsborough on US 26, and then it looks more broadly at how diversion traffic affects other routes in the area. So looking not just at 26, but how other roads function in relation to 26. So I don't have a lane mile, but I can share the project area again, and hopefully you guys all got the 2 fact sheets that we've done so far, and that'll give you some additional background information.
Okay. And then the other question, I was trying to follow the freight patterns, the 2 maps, the slide number, I think number 9. I couldn't understand the story that's being depicted on the slide. Total traffic versus trucks percentage. What's the significance of this, basically? Okay. What story is it telling?
Sure.
So,
go ahead,
did you want to take that? Okay.
Yes, happy to revisit this slide and kind of show some of the takeaways. So on the left, we're seeing total truck traffic, and we were seeing total truck traffic. There it is. And of the total daily trips of 6,700 per day, trucks make up 5.3 of them. So it's kind of driving home the point that while freight may not be causing the congestion problems, they are stuck in the traffic with everyone else. And then on the right, you can see Cornelius Pass Road is in the top left corner of that map that's on the right. And that darker bold line shows that At peak hours, truck percentage is going up to about 25% on Cornelius Pass Road. So that's showing all of the freight diversion that's happening onto Cornelius Pass, because at those times, sometimes that's the more reliable route for time savings. Does that answer your questions, Commissioner Fye?
Yes, actually. Yeah, thank you.
Did Frank go silent? Where's Frank? Mass chaos. We can do whatever we want. Hey, I was going to throw one more in there, and I think you guys had it on the study. Maybe it was just a quick blip, but didn't you guys mention also the overpass of using Barnes or Cornell as an alternate to 26 is one of the bypass areas?
Yes, in terms of investment options that we're looking at, widening Barnes Road, and I'm not positive about Cornell, but I believe Cornell as well are included in things we're evaluating. Is that your question?
Yeah, the Cornell feed to Barnes to make the leap over into the Portland proper. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but almost every trip I take in, Google recommends you should go over Barnes Road. It'd be faster than going 26. So that's more credence to that concern I brought up earlier. And to Nafisa's question too, I mean, and I talked about it, right? The truck, everybody trying to get to Terminal 6, and you guys did in your presentation, right? Part of the story is they're using Corn Pass, a 2-lane recent state highway, because they can actually drive to Columbia County and Highway 30 and across one of the other bridges, the 405 or you see them even going over, up north there into the St. John's, of the bridge there, rather than going 26. That's a heck of a statement when our freight haulers are using that obscure route rather than using the 26 with its 3 and 4 lanes wide all the way to the 5, because it's more reliable. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a couple of improvements on Cornelius Pass and Barnes that will be part of the modeling that we do.
Okay, I apologize. My other machines decided to do a Windows update right in the middle of this. So I'm on another machine now. Other questions? Going once, twice. All right. Thank you, Stephanie and Kate, for educating us on this study.
Thank you for having us.
All right. That brings us to item 4C, the JPAC agenda. Mayor Callaway will review what's on the agenda coming up.
Thank you very much. Let's see, this week, couple of I guess 3 things that are just, I would say, noteworthy. One is that there's going to be kind of a but there will be a presentation on the Montgomery Park Transit and Development Strategy, which I think is going to be including streetcar. If Pete Truax were still with us, I'd say in his honor of Pete, a streetcar named Desire, but I'll skip that because nobody else is old enough to get that reference. Let's see. The other thing is we will have a presentation by Metro's lobbyists, kind of giving an update on the state legislative agenda. And, I would encourage you to either tune in to watch that, or at least watch it if you can on an update later, because they're active in Salem, and we'll have some good information and updates to share. And then lastly, there's a resolution to split off a Beaverton enhancement project from an ODOT project, and basically I can give you all the pages and citations as to what it's about, but long story short, the original design concept that was developed by ODOT in Beaverton included sidewalk widening, traffic signal replacement, minor highway alignment, on and on and on. The concept was ultimately rejected by the new Metro Council leadership and City Council. And so ODOT, Beaverton, and Metro have worked together to create a more focused project scope that's acceptable to all partners. So that's why this is being pulled apart from and will be handled separately. So with the approval, ODOT will proceed to increase the preliminary engineering phase by $800,000 to complete the design. Without approval, the preliminary engineering phase will be on hold until sufficient funding for everything is in place. So we will support that. But that was really, I guess, just kind of the most intense thing that affects anything in Washington County. And then lastly, JPAC will have their annual trip back to DC in the first week of June. And this is not a trip that is exclusive to JPAC membership. It's one that I participated on before I was a member of JPAC, and it's always good to go back. It's with county folks, it's with TriMet and others, and it's a great opportunity to meet with Department of Transportation folks, with our own legislative delegation, and just great opportunity to network and advocate for our region. So I think that's it. If there's any questions.
Questions for Steve? I've got a question. I don't know if this is more for Steve or, Mayor Dillon.
I'll see if it's the same one. Are we trying to organize, historically we've done a county day the day before. Are we trying to organize that same kind of plan so that some of us may want to be there actually a day earlier for the county day?
And that would be a great question for our county staff.
Thank you. Yes, my understanding is that we may be looking at trying to organize some times to meet with department staff or electeds, but we're pretty early in a planning stage yet. The trip's in June, I believe. Is that right, Chris? Yeah.
Nope. Jeff, my question is a little different. So in the JPAC agenda is this 2022 compliance report. Or listing cities category by category in terms of compliance with some of Metro's urban growth management. And so what are the implications if you're not in compliance? Because I'm looking at, not to pick on them, but Mayor Fender with King City not in compliance, handful of cities not in compliance with certain aspects of their plan. What's the impact of that? I don't know if that's a question for Steve or Steven.
Yeah, I'll look to Chris. I think she's probably a little bit more up to speed on some of this. Yeah, it's interesting, and these are areas where planning is in process and hasn't been completed on the initially anticipated timelines, I believe, is the issue in terms of non-compliance. But maybe Chris can fill in the info gaps.
I would kick the ball over to our Metro counselors, I think, because I think there are various reasons why a community is not in compliance. I think they all have good different reasons. So I don't know if Councilor Rosenthal wants to talk about that.
Not particularly. I think it's not through lack of good faith, but in some cases, the compliance has been the result of specific issues and specific problems that have arisen, partly with neighborhoods, partly with some natural resource lands and things like that. So these are problems that the cities are working through. We've been trying to be proactive in providing grants to the cities, but the populations don't always agree with what the consultants suggest. So I think that's the main issue there.
All right, so it's just basically a status check as of now, and it's work to be done that you're just making cities aware certain things need to get done.
And one of the things I've mentioned to the rest of the Metro staff is, at least in this district in Washington County, particularly, most of the cities are very proactive in meeting it. And like I said, things don't always go according to plan, but it isn't because of lack of trying and lack of effort on the part of the cities. And I'm including all the cities that I touch, which is, Hillsborough, Beaverton, Tualatin, Wilsonville, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway.
Because I could see why, again, not to pick on you, Jamie, King City is going through this big process of, the UGB expansion, and it's a small city, a small staff. So to keep up with all the requirements it's got to be very difficult for her city manager and her staff.
They're small but mighty.
All right. Any other questions about JPAC for Steve, or Mayor Callaway, I should say? All right, that brings us to MPAC. I think Mayor Rosner attended at least one MPAC meeting. So can you bring us up to speed on what's moving and grooving at MPAC?
Sure. So the last meeting, I don't have an agenda yet for the next meeting, so I can't speak to that. But in our last meeting, there was conversation, but there was just an MPAC overview for new members, kind of getting everyone up to speed. The main conversation was around the upcoming urban growth boundary cycle and ask coming up next year, and what the involvement of MPAC's going to be in that. Under the charter, MPAC's involved in reviewing that plan. So that's basically what we went through. Nothing substantive in terms of decision making or anything like that at this point, but obviously as that progresses, I'll be updating this group. On a related note, Pam Treese had a great idea, and we're going to start having a meeting of all the MPAC representatives that are in Washington County prior to each MPAC meeting, so we can coordinate and our message when we get into that room, as well as coordinating with this group as we move forward. That's about it. That's all I have for this one.
So are they envisioning obviously multiple meetings over the coming year on the UGB expansion or possible UGB expansion? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And there was a lot of questions. There was a lot of questions about understanding, especially when they're doing their studies and looking, at the housing needs analysis and all those types of things, and really understanding what the metrics are using and how they're getting to those numbers. We ask a lot of questions along those lines. So I have a feeling we'll be pushing them a little bit in that arena as well, to really understand where their data is coming from, how they're coming to conclusions, et cetera.
All right, great. That brings us to other business and agency updates. And I'll cede the floor, if you will, to Chris for any updates from county staff.
Yes, I can give updates, but I'd be happy to hear if anyone member has any news from your agency jurisdiction that you'd like to share. I'll count to maybe 5. No one jumps in, I'll jump into the rest. No hands raised, no new breaking news. Okay, so we have a few things coming attractions. Someone just mentioned about MPAC, and yes, the Metro Urban Growth Report will take up much of MPAC's time next year, as well as MTAC, the Technical Advisory Committee that supports MPAC. And I've never seen an urban growth report that doesn't have a new twist, a new thing to address. Something is different, either from the legislature or a new methodology or something. And this time it's there. We have hot topics on industrial lands, and we have hot topics on housing needs and methodologies. So it will be a very there will be a lot of discussion at MPAC, and therefore we are proposing, if you're okay with it, bringing the Metro's proposed work plan to you so that you all get an overview. The WCC bylaws call for weighing in and developing positions of countywide significance on regional and state issues. So it seems like now at the ground floor, it would be an opportunity. But I'm going to stop talking there because I see Councilor Rosenthal's hand up.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment. As we know, it's a little bit more complicated and a little bit different this year. One, we have the recent legislation that eliminates the exclusivity of single family zoning, and we don't really have a strong handle yet on how much of an impact that's having in various different districts. It's going to be different for each city. And secondly, as all you mayors know, the density that we're getting in these newer developments, whether it's River Terrace or Kingston Terrace or the new Tualatin development or the Frog Pond area, the densities are higher than historically, and a lot of that has to do with market forces. And so these are things that are going to be incorporated into it, and it's going to be a little bit different. And let's just say it's going to require a little bit more creative juices on the part of Metro staff.
Mm-hmm.
And I see Chris is nodding her head. So it's going to be a different animal this year to some extent. Plus we have state predictions of a great deal of, of under housing. But as you know, there are plans on the part of the western side, particularly in Washington County, for over 20,000 housing units be in the process of planning and being built. That's not insubstantial.
Mayor Rosener, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to add, as we all know, there's a lot of legislation in Salem right now that could change that as we move through that process as well. And so I agree, we're all going to have to be on our toes as we work through that.
Yeah.
So we are proposing this group does inform MPAC as well. Some of you are MPAC members, and is it an opportunity? I think all of you will be affected one way or another through this process. So we propose to bring that forward and have an opportunity. And I think the MPAC agendas are going to cover this a lot this next year. So that was one item. The other one is the countywide transit study. Many of your staff are working with our consultants and our staff on a countywide transit study. It feels like we've got how many different transit studies can we do at one time? This one has been in the books for a long time. And it's really taking a different look at needs, access needs, and priorities. And it's a little bit more local with local input. And there is a public comment period now. But it wrapped up on March 12th. And we had over 900 comments of a much more granular, what are our interests in transit priorities. And we've done some of these before with our STIF funding, you may remember, but a lot of that, it's just a little bit different context this time in Spanish and English. So we are bringing the results to you, and I believe that's in April as well for an update. So more to come on that, and we're really pleased that it's been so successful, and we are always excited to see a countywide study that involves jurisdictions from around the county and that we work together to try to better understand issues facing us and opportunities, whether it's first, last mile, transit signal priority, priorities on routes and service needs. It's just really a sort of a local viewpoint on needs and priorities.
All right.
I see a question up.
I think that's left over for Councilor
Okay.
Rosenthal. Is it a new question, Councilor Rosenthal? You left your hand up.
No, that it was left up. You're right.
Okay. All right. Lingering or latent, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, so that is coming to you. We also have, oh boy, I was surprised the JPAC agenda was so light because the TPAC agenda has been packed. The TPAC agenda has been packed.
Some time focused besides our next April meeting. Do we need to try to get another one in this month, or I don't know. I'm asking the question because it seems like a lot to try to digest in one meeting.
Well, that's a really good question. I know personally, it's taken me a lot of time to read through it. So yeah, that's a really good question. Let's think about that. Let's talk about it with the chair, vice chair, and think about what we have available, because I think there's going to be another round of edits that Metro is doing based on the staff comments. That's a good idea. We also still owe you. We have them written up. We just need to give them back to you. The comments that you had on the initial policies from those workshops. That's been on our to-do list. we have them. We just need to polish them up and get them back to you. And that would serve as kind of a memory trigger.
And maybe we can't do it before the end of March, but maybe that's a consideration of normally
Yeah, maybe in April.
We meet the second. Yeah, maybe we need to meet the first and the second Monday in April to digest all that.
Yeah, let's think about that and see how we can do that. That's a good point. I think that was what I had. The only other update, the Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation is meeting April 3rd. They're meeting in person in Clackamas County. And I think you saw on Matt Freitag's slide, that'll go sort of, it'll follow at the same location that there's a public comment period on the STIP, and then that'll be in person. And the agenda is still being refined. They're trying to figure out what the best topic is, given that it's in Clackamas County. And then just one last thing, and then I would like to turn it to see if there's any comments on the Regional Toll Advisory Committee. But the I-5 tolling project environmental assessments is out for public comment. ODOT extended the timeline to review that from 45 days to 60 days. Comments are due April 21st. That's another question for you, whether you thought we've heard enough about tolling. It is precedent setting because it's the first environmental assessment in the region. More to come on that clearly. And whether you think that's worth your time. I just at least wanted you to know, you can think about that, but at least wanted you to know that comments on that are due mid-April. There's still some requests to extend that further because you know that environmental assessments, they're thick and deep. So that's all I have. I hope that we're open to any suggestions you have for meeting agenda. Of course, always just let us know. And then is there anyone, either Mayor Bubenik or Commissioner Fye, would you like to say anything about the Regional Toll Advisory Committee? And if I've left anybody out who was at the last Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation that wants to say anything, please do. I think y'all had an update on the STIP kind of like today's, if I remember right.
So I'll go with Mayors Lube or Wenzel. Anything you want to point out from the Region 1 ACT meetings you've been attending?
I have nothing to point out or add.
Okay. I think we lost Mayor Wenzel back to her classroom. All right. Commissioner Fye, you want to go first or me for RTAC?
Um,
Because you're wearing two hats now.
I know. I know.
If you folks don't know, Commissioner Fye is on the RTAC and she's also on the STRAC. The STRAC is the rulemaking group that's associated with tolling. So she's going to wear both hats.
Yes, and I think to simplify it, I think I'm representing the RTAC on the STRAC. Yeah, I don't know if that simplifies it or perhaps complicates it, but yeah, I don't think there's any big updates in terms of this month's meeting for the RTAC. I think myself, Commissioner Savas, and President Lynn Peterson and Chris Stickler meet to develop the agenda for the RTAC. So we have that meeting scheduled at least for this month and to discuss what topics to put forward for the team. So I'll know more after that meeting, but as of now, we don't have the agenda for this month. But at least I think I'll leave it for you, Mayor Bubenik, to talk about, but at least we're on the we started the conversation to talk about the revenue.
So this month, RTAC doesn't have a meeting because I think ODOT's pretty focused on the EA and getting comments from the EA. I just drafted a letter and signed it and sent it away to Mandy Putney of ODOT asking for the EA to stay open for 90 days rather than 60 days because, we have our smaller staff here. As Chris was saying, the EA is pretty thick and you don't race through this thing. From folks I've talked to who are actually taking the time to read through it, they are finding mistakes and omissions and errors that they want corrected. So it's worth taking a look at. As Commissioner Fye said, we actually started talking revenue and cost at the last RTAC meeting. We finally agreed on the charter. It was a very quiet agreement on the charter for the RTAC committee, how, our rules. And we also quietly agreed on ODOT's initiative to try to speed up the process between I-205 tolling, Abernathy tolling, and RMPP. They want to get it down to a year and not longer than a year. So they had some processes and ideas how to make that happen quicker. The one thing that raised a few eyebrows for the Clackamas County cities was the information about the cost, the tolling costs. So based on some preliminary analysis, every trip, just overhead costs for ODOT, that's like credit card fees, administration, all the hardware required for the tolling, is about 70 to 80 cents per trip. So right off the bat, they have to cover that. So they had a couple of models of the toll for the 205 being anywhere from $1 to $4 to $6. And, you know, they again have to arrive on a dollar amount where they can cover their cost, but there is at least some net revenue. And based on the preliminary analysis they showed us, was that pretty much the cheapest it could be is $3. And at $3, that that 80 cents takes up a big chunk of the toll and doesn't leave a lot left over for net revenue. So we're going to be talking more about that in the future, but they actually did give us some numbers for the first time since we started meeting. So I look forward to the meeting in April. I see Councilor Rosenthal's hand is up, and then Commissioner Fye.
Well, I have a couple of, thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple of things that I want to add at the end of the meeting, but regarding that, Metro will be submitting both a staff comments on the EA as well as a general policy statement on the EA, which will come to council before the end of the review period. I may submit my own comments because let's just say I'm not particularly happy with the EA. But I'll save it for the end of the meeting. There's two other minor items that I would like to just mention.
All right. So I'll go back to Commissioner Fye. You put your hand down.
Oh, yeah, I think you clarified it. My meeting this month to plan
the STRAC.
Commissioner, it's for the RTAC, but in April. I think you clarified it. I just I wanted to make sure that I don't stress in case Clackamas folks are listening in and thinking. But the meeting this week is to plan for the April 1. You're right.
I'm part of those Clackamas folks. I'm in both counties. All right. Even if 205 tolling isn't going to impact your city right away, please look at the EA, especially for transportation wonk. I love this kind of stuff. Please take a look at it. You can go to ODOT's website. Where the criticisms right off the bat was the initial release of the EA and the website was only in English. So the folks, the RTAC committee came back saying, come on, you got to at least get this in Spanish and ideally some multiple other languages, primary languages in the area, so that this is equitable and those people who can be impacted by the tolling can at least read these documents in their native language. Which ODOT said, okay. And I think that's why he tacked on at least 15 days. I'm hoping for more. All right. So I'm going to go back to Councilor Rosenthal for his two items.
Thanks. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say a brief word that the TV highway study is ongoing. It is going to reach some critical areas because there isn't sufficient money in the small grants to fund a complete project for the entire length. So some hard decisions are going to be made regarding whether additional funding can be made available or whether funding can be gotten from some other sources to deal with that. There's two different segments, of course. There's the segment from Forest Grove to Hillsborough and the segment from Hillsborough down to Beaverton. So there's a lot of hard decisions and critical analysis. They've done a lot of scenario analysis, and it's pretty interesting. Anyway, it's one of the interesting things is that there's less ridership in the route from Forest Grove into Hillsborough than in the other district, but the ridership density is actually higher. In other words, per mile of bus route. So there's more people getting on per mile in the Cornelius and Forest Grove areas than there are in the Aloha area. That's just sort of an interesting take away from all this. So that's ongoing. It's going to be continuing. Hopefully we have some decision about LPA later in the summer. So if anybody has concerns, I know, well, obviously the Mayor Callaway and Mayor, and Beaverton and everybody else is pretty much keeping track of that. And then one other thing, which is not a big deal, but it is a regional issue, is that we're moving forward with the DOS, which is the evaluation of what to do with the Expo Center. And it looks like now there's a lot of people that are getting behind the idea of course, keeping the Japanese internment section and making that into some sort of memorial, but also focusing the Expo Center on a regional athletic event kind of center, as well as the kinds of things it's doing. So if anybody has any comments on, I mean, it's a regional facility. So if anybody has any comments, my guess is you should contact either Metro or Steve Falstick, who is the manager of the Metro facilities, and make some comments as to what your druthers might be, because it's used by pretty much everybody in the region, as far as I know.
All right. Mayor Callaway. This better not be about the Hops' new big stadium.
No, I was just going to say, Willamette Week had a really good article about the Expo Center, and it's relatively quick and brief read, and so it's just a good way to build on what Councilor Rosenthal just said about the Expo Center
and the bigger stadium for the Hops. I saw that article too. I'm like, what? All right.
Just for clarification, we're committing about 15% and it's coming out of TLT. So where it's all good.
All right.
Are you calling in from Hop Stadium right now?
His suite.
It's a box. It's called a box.
Yeah, his luxury box suite. Yes. All right. Any other updates to share with community here?
I was going to throw out one that's light and airy and fun. So 4/29 from 11 to 3, we're going to have the Day of the Child, the Dia de los Niños celebration at Centro from 11 to 3. So love to see all you come out and join us for that. I'll get a chance to pitch it again next month, but I thought I'd get it on your calendars now. That's the 29th of April, 11 to 3 at Centro.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, we get to finish up about 10 minutes early. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. Have a terrific afternoon. Stay dry, and I'll go ahead and close the meeting. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.